controversial try sees the Melbourne Storm win the NRL Grand Final. Super Sunday for Sydney's Olympic planners, and the Indonesian pullout from East Timor almost complete. Good evening. Also tonight, courtside celebrations as teenager Leighton Hewitt leads Australia into the final of the Davis Cup. But first, a sensational result in the Rugby League Grand Final, and Ken Sutcliffe is at Stadium Australia. Ken.
Roscoe, the Storm stole the premiership from the hands of St George Illawarra in the dying minutes of the match. In only their second year in the competition, Melbourne won 20-18, victory coming from a penalty try and conversion just before full time. A world record league crowd witnessed one of the most dramatic finishes to a grand final in years at a new venue on a day which started with high hopes for all.
At the St George Illawarra Leagues Club, sport mixed with politics.
It's like the morning of election, isn't it?
The Prime Minister is the Dragons' #1 ticket holder, and after breakfast with the faithful, this was not a day for diplomacy.
Oh, St George Illawarra, of course. I think by about 15.
A rousing farewell for the players as thousands of fans began their own bus journey to Homebush. Similar scenes in Wollongong, though even in Dragons' heartland there was pockets of resistance. At their hotel, the Storm received their own political send-off from Victorian Premier Jeff Kennett. Most Melbourne fans were forced to watch the final from home, leaving the Dragons' army of supporters to dominate the crowd. The official attendance of 107,558 surpasses the previous grand final record set in 1965 by almost 30,000. Our troops in Dili joined the millions more watching around the world on television, while some of the game's greats who retired this season were paraded during the pre-game entertainment before the highlight of the one day in September.
This was the moment of the greatest moment of
Andrew McKinlay, National 9 News.
Melbourne was first to take the field, and even before kick-off, St George Illawarra carried the most pressure.
Raging hot favourites.
The Dragons were reduced to tears. The party in Melbourne is expected to last all week. For the Storm, a premiership in only their second year. Clinton Fletcher, National 9 News.
And Roscoe will be back later in the Bulletin with more of the grand final and the rest of today's sport.
OK, thanks, Ken. We'll see you then. The tight finish has led to tension at Homebush Stadium, with reports of brawls outside the ground and near the railway station. There's also been trouble outside the St George Leagues Club. Within minutes of the result, police descended on the area, making several arrests. At one stage, police blocked off the road with patrol cars, with officers forming a strong presence on the ground. And the massive crowd at Stadium Australia contributed to the biggest test yet for Sydney's Olympic facilities. Games officials calling today Super Sunday. As well as the league, Homebush Bay hosted 3 Olympic trial competitions, while 3 other test events were held elsewhere in the city.
A record day for Homebush Bay. A world record rugby league crowd, including Stadium Australia's millionth spectator, and at the same time, same place, 3 Olympic test events: hockey, archery and modern pentathlon. A clash of peoples and a true Olympic test of resources: venues, timekeepers, referees, marshals and athletes.
We're no way kidding ourselves about how much we've got to do and how the distance we have to travel yet to make it a great games next year.
SOCOG dubbed today Super Sunday, the climax of 11 test events this month.
We had thunderstorms the other night that delayed hockey, had a power failure at the regatta centre at Penrith. We had a train strike on Friday. We had poor wind at sailing yesterday, but we did cope.
And there's been smaller glitches, like at the handball.
We played the wrong Egyptian national anthem.
Important but minor annoyances, according to SOCOG, all part of the learning exercise.
SOCOG's given itself 7 out of 10, but Jim Sloman says that doesn't mean his staff can now take it easy.
And that's a bit of a worry, because I don't want this organisation to think they're going too well.
Not that game staff have too much time for praise. Many have been pulling 16-hour days. Fatigue is proving SOCOG's greatest lesson from this stringent dress rehearsal.
We've got to be very careful that we don't blow our people out.
Michael Usher, National 9 News.
It's the eve of a landmark day in East Timor. The Indonesian army due to formally surrender its control of the province tomorrow. The UN peacekeepers will be taking total charge amid fears that militia forces could take that as a signal to commence a guerrilla war.
Clear evidence today that 24 years of Indonesian military rule in East Timor is over. Well over 1,000 TNI troops paraded on Dili's dock on their way out.
We just come to do our job.
The Indonesian military pullout is accelerating to a close and is expected to be completed in the next few days. And they say they won't be back. But before they set sail, a last-minute black market on the waterfront, the East Timorese have been left with so little, the trade is for bags of rice and other supplies the military no longer need.
Expensive.
And as the balance of power swings away from the Indonesians, the East Timorese enjoy little victories. Here a mob has captured a militia gangster. Lucky for him they don't deal in his brand of terror. Instead he's marched to the nearest troops and handed over. Moments later the Australian soldiers have him firmly under control. The crowd is delighted. Long live East Timor, they shout. From little victories to small miracles, a British Gurkha field hospital brings a healing hand to a Dili neighbourhood.
This is the way that we can win the hearts and minds of the community as well.
Even people who are well gather around singing a song of thanks for the doctors. Acts of gratitude are happening all the time now as people begin to feel safer.
Clearly, though, the local population that were under threat in this period of instability now feel confident enough to come back out.
Very happy. Very happy. Very happy.
Yes. Meanwhile, news today of the start of the first official war crimes investigation into murders in a fishing village near Dili.
2 bodies were found. Both have been executed from the evidence that was found on the bodies. This was videotaped and filmed.
And the malicious vandalism of the militias and departing Indonesian troops reminds everyone there's a long way to go. Nearly every East Timorese city and town are said to be in ruins. Where they can, the people are starting to work, cleaning up property still standing, starting to remove the stains of oppression. In Dili, Simon Boda, National 9 News.
Dili has been hit by a new round of looting today, desperate locals breaking into the warehouse of an aid agency. In marked contrast, some Timorese were at worship, putting their faith in God, rather than taking their chances with the looting mob.
The people of East Timor are still unsure whether their prayers have been truly answered. Dili's destitute gather for an open-air mass in the city's main sports stadium, now home to many refugees, uncertain whether Indonesia's departure will bring peace or renewed civil war. Aid is continuing to arrive. Several tons of food and medical supplies from Australia unloaded at Dili port. With looting still going on, they'll want to begin distribution as soon as possible. A warehouse used by the World Food Programme and other aid agencies was broken into today.
We tried to explain to them that we cannot have food distributions directly from warehouses.
The concern now, though, is that the aid won't reach the people who need it most. Given the anarchy of the past few weeks and the desperation of many people here, looting on this scale is hardly surprising. And once more, the foreign peacekeepers are doing little to stop it. But Australian peacekeepers did intervene when 6 suspected militiamen and an Indonesian soldier tried to join the looting spree.
Sit down, sit down.
The situation was quickly diffused. The soldier and the terrified suspects only briefly detained before being freed for lack of evidence. The Indonesian army continues to do their best to destroy what's left of Dili, setting alight a bank that once held the national currency, a currency that's worthless now that Indonesian rule is almost at an end. In Dili, Adrian Brown, National 9 News.
In the news ahead, an Anglican bishop resigns over sex allegations, and a massive aftershock hits earthquake-devastated Taiwan. The Anglican Bishop of Canberra and Goulburn has resigned after admitting to an extramarital affair with a female parishioner 15 years ago. The Right Reverend George Browning has admitted to the one-off incident, the matter brought to light when the woman complained to the church 18 months ago.
The Church takes absolutely seriously this kind of failure on the part of one of its clergy.
Bishop Browning resigned despite a tribunal finding that he should not be removed. The 56-year-old was considered a possible future leader of the Anglican Church in Australia. Australia's top military commander today ruled out the need for conscription to boost Australian troop numbers in East Timor. Defence Chief Admiral Chris Barry saying it simply won't be necessary. Earlier this week, Prime Minister Howard said the government might consider national service, but the defence boss says the military has the numbers.
With thousands of Australian troops expected to be on the ground in East Timor for up to a year, there's a question mark over whether our military has enough manpower to sustain its peacekeeping operations. While the Prime Minister has left open the conscription option, though not in the near future, Defence Chief Chris Barry has slammed the door on national service.
I would rule it out in these circumstances. I just don't think it's appropriate.
Admiral Barry admits numbers will be stretched. The military's top brass is working overtime on plans to prepare more troops to boost the security mission. The Defence Chief will report to the government with recommendations this week. He says the first rotation is likely to come from Brisbane.
We will build that up, provide it with the equipment, get going on the training so that we have that in place.
The military's key role in Olympic security is also under review. Specialist jobs like counter-terrorism will go ahead as planned, though the Defence Chief says other tasks like providing drivers may be canned. On regional security, Admiral Barry steered clear of the controversy provoked by John Howard's new doctrine of Australia playing the United States deputy in Asia, a plan that's infuriated many of our neighbours.
Look, I think that's an issue that's got to be resolved, but that'll all be part of our strategic review.
Flo Bitcon, National 9 News.
A massive aftershock has killed at least 4 people in Taiwan. Rescuers looking for survivors of Tuesday's devastating earthquake had to scramble for cover. 2 were hit by falling debris, but they weren't seriously hurt. Local authorities say the latest deaths were in a landslide on a country road and in 2 nearby towns. The aftershock measured 6.8 on the Richter scale, only a little less than Tuesday's quake, which killed more than 2,000 people and left another 80,000 homeless. A fiery pile-up in the American state of Oregon has left at least 7 people dead and dozens injured. About 50 vehicles were involved in a string of accidents caused by a dust storm.
On the remote country highway, a major trucking route connecting America's northwestern states, wreckage strewn over 2 kilometres. Investigators blame freak weather. 75-kilometre-an-hour winds whipped up a dust storm so thick, drivers were blinded.
Didn't see nothing. It was like a blackout.
Tony Bird was driving a semi-trailer. A car slammed into it. The driver was killed. It all started when one truck slowed to a crawl because of the condition.
It had basically been an accordion type effect. When they came into the dusty area, they slammed on their brakes and they rear-ended one another.
All up, some 50 vehicles, about half of them semi-trailers, were involved on both sides of the road. Several exploded in flames. At least 7 people died. 23 are in hospital. Officials will search through the wreckage during the night for further bodies. Nick McCallum, National 9 News.
New Zealand Prime Minister Jenny Shipley has announced the country will go to the polls on November the 27th. Political analysts believe Mrs Shipley's National Party will be struggling to retain power. Sport next, and Ken joins us again from Stadium Australia, where Melbourne has had a sensational win against St George Illawarra. Ken.
Yes, it was an amazing result, and the Storm will be celebrating hard and long the historic win. That's coming up. And Sergio Garcia celebrating as if he had won his own premiership. As we reported earlier, a world record crowd of over 107,000 saw Melbourne score a stunning victory in the NRL Grand Final. The Storm trailed St George Illawarra 14-0 before coming back to win 20-18.
I can guarantee that.
The joy almost jumped through the TV. Kaya brothers shared the moment, while the reality of leading 14-0, then going out runners-up, was written on faces and in tears.
Wish they would have, because they might have missed the goal from out there.
Brett Camorley won the Clive Churchill Medal for Best Player. To experience their first rugby league victory lap. Parramatta defeated Balmain in the First Division Grand Final. The Eels are the minor premiers, and this season they've scored a remarkable 156 tries.
Today, 9 more were added to the tally as they wiped aside the Tigers 44-8. Canterbury defeated Newcastle 18-12 in the Jersey Flegg Grand Final. Peter Overton, National 9 News.
A sensational display by Leighton Hewitt has put Australia into the Davis Cup final for the first time since 1993. The match against France to be held in early December. Today, the Australians took care of the reverse singles, Wayne Arthurs winning the dead rubber after Hewitt outgunned Yevgeny Kafelnikov in straight sets.
Stung by the 4-set defeat to Wayne Arthurs, Yevgeny Kafelnikov promised to give Leighton Hewitt a lesson, but the 18-year-old broke in the opening game. Hewitt kept the world's number 2 backpedaling for most of the first set.
Exquisite tennis.
Hewitt won at 6-4 and made a bright start in the second, breaking for a 2-1 lead.
That's great tennis.
The Russian changed tactics, got the better of a baseline battle and won 4 consecutive games.
That's good play.
But Kafelnikov learned Hewitt isn't the kind to give up. The Australian reeled off 5 straight games to go up 2 sets. And Hewitt couldn't have been on better terms with himself. Hungry to succeed, Hewitt was serving Kafelnikov humble pie.
Outstanding.
The Australian broke early in the third set and rubbed the Russian's nose into the Brisbane grass.
Oh, what a shot.
Before going on to win the third, 6-2.
6-4, 7-5, 6-2.
There's no better feeling than coming out and beating plenty of guys who's been mouthing off all week about us and how much they're going to beat us.
Charles Christian, National 9 News.
Australia has escaped with a lucky draw in the second cricket test against Sri Lanka because of rain. Only 19 minutes of play was possible today before the wet weather set in. Sri Lanka stretching its overall lead to 123. The locals lead the 3-match series 1-0. Australia has maintained its unbeaten record at the World Netball Championships in Christchurch. The Australians led all the way to beat England 59-44. Jenny Bollais was in sparkling form, keeping the Australians in front with impressive shooting. Inspired Golf has helped the United States fight back after its first day woes in the Ryder Cup. After team events, the Europeans lead 10-6, with the competition resting on tomorrow's singles. The honours were shared on day 2. Phil Mickelson teamed with Tom Lehman to thrill the galleries, with irons then rat hot all day. World number 2, David Duval, also came good on the rolling greens as the Americans took turns showing their class. Playing up to the crowds has also become an art. Spain's Sergio Garcia thought he'd won his own grand final. Terrific sport, and I guess, Roscoe, Melbourne is now the capital of the sporting world, until next year anyway.
Fantastic win for them, and what a day. Thanks, Ken. Weather details after the break, then the quest for beauty behind bars. But first, the pools. Now look at the weather, and it was another cloudy and drizzly day in Sydney, with a top temperature of 23 in the city, 24 at Richmond. Tomorrow we can expect more showers, 19 degrees in the city and up to 21 in the west. On the synoptic chart, the high-pressure system near Tasmania will move further east, directing humid southeasterly winds into our region. Around the country tomorrow, a fine day in Melbourne and Adelaide, wet and windy in Brisbane and Perth. And looking ahead for Sydney, showers tomorrow and Tuesday, mainly fine Wednesday, with a chance of more showers on Thursday. In many countries, beauty quests are now considered politically incorrect, but not so in Peru, where the competition has a captive market. The annual Miss Prison Beauty Contest is the highlight of the year for most inmates at this jail in Lima. 800 women are doing time in a facility designed to house only 500. So authorities are keen to promote any event which will take the prisoners' minds off their cramped and Spartan conditions. And the winner was an 18-year-old inmate from Holland, who received her award from none other than Miss Peru. That's the news for this Sunday. I'm Ian Ross. Good night.